Good morning. So today I am on my way to start all of my medical appointments again in preparation for my fibroid removal surgery. Today's appointment technically doesn't really have anything to do with the fibroid surgery. I just kind of, scheduled all of them kind of in a row. So I'm on my way to get my mammogram since I turned 40 this month. And I'm really excited about getting a mammogram. I've never gotten one before, just simply because my gynecologist felt that since I didn't have any type of history in my family as far as breast cancer was concerned, I just always got like the exams with my hand. But when I turned 40, that's when she said, it's time for me to go ahead and move forward with getting a mammogram. So I have just kind of been, trying to read up on what I'm supposed to do. And so far, of course, I have on a separate top, separate bottom, so I can just, remove my top. And then also the lotion, not putting on lotion and not putting on deodorant. When I got up this morning, when I set my alarm, I literally had on my alarm, do not put lotion on, do not put deodorant on, because I know, like sometimes you just kind of get in the habit of your routine in the morning, getting dressed. And, hopefully you put at least deodorant on. I mean, to each his own, no judgment here. I know for myself, your homegirl needs some deodorant, okay? And some strong deodorant. And so I just had to keep repeating that to myself this morning. Don't put any deodorant on. Don't put any lotion on. So that is kind of funny, but I have my deodorant in my purse. So after the appointment, I can, do that. But I'm trying not to move so forcefully so I don't sweat. And I know that's probably the last thing that they're thinking about, but that's the first thing on my mind. Oh my God, I don't want these, people to be like, oh my God, she stinks. But rules are rules. That's what it is. And it, is to help to make sure that any particles that the deodorant or the lotion may leave on your body don't show up in your skin. And, potentially give you some kind of false positive or something like that. So that is where I'm on my way to, and I don't know if they'll let me film. Most likely they're not, but I'll try to get what I can. And so let's go ahead and go. So it's Monday morning. That's some really good coffee. It's new coffee packets that I picked up when I went on my trip to Asheville. They had all these little snacks and goodies and coffee. So I brought all that home, and that's what I'm testing out. It's supposed to be brain support coffee that has mushrooms and stuff in it for brain support. So I figured, hey, I ran out of my coffee. Why not use it this morning? But it's actually really good coffee. So I might have to check that out. But anyways, it is Monday morning. It's a rainy Monday morning. And Today is my MRI. And the thing about it is I've had an MRI before, and the girl on the phone, well, the receptionist, I shouldn't say the receptionist on the phone when I made the appointment, she was like, I think you have to fast like 2 hours before your appointment. And I was just kind of like, oh, okay. Because the last time I had an MRI, which was in 2016, I didn't have to do any of that. But when they sent me, like the paperwork and my confirmation and all of that from the location, they didn't say anything about fasting. So I'm just going to play it safe, because I think she said 2 hours before or something like that. Because I was kind of like, I'm getting a MRI pelvic exam. If I eat, they're trying to see my uterus. My food does not go down to my uterus, but I am no doctor. I do not know. I did kind of try to Google it a little bit, and it said for certain MRIs, you're supposed to fast if it's like a pelvic or stomach or something along those lines. So I'm gonna just play it safe. They didn't tell me, but she said it. I don't know. It's all confusing, but I did get my results already. That means they were working really hard, because I had my mammogram on Friday. I woke up this morning and I was notified that my results were normal and negative. They said that my breasts were dense. I had dense tissue, which technically means, I tried to Google it, and it just basically said, like, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you have denser breast tissue. That's why they don't give, unless you have like a history of breast cancer, they really don't give you a mammogram, because it's really kind of hard to see that in a mammogram scan. And so they said that my breasts were extremely dense, which I'm kind of like, oh, okay. But that's basically like the ducts, like if the ducts in your breast that would produce or help you to have breast milk. And so I kind of knew that, like, with feeling my breast, like I kind of knew that I could feel that. Like I don't have a lot of fatty tissue. Yeah, that's just pretty much what they said in my test results. And, they found no other traces of what could be cancerous. So I was happy about that. I was actually just so surprised that, like, I went in for my mammogram on Friday, and then I got my test results like literally early Monday morning, because I think my phone like got an alert that those results were in there like at 3 o'clock this morning. So I was like, y'all be working. So shout out to the medical industry. That's like, it's really good, I guess. I think it is. So yeah, but the mammogram on Friday, which I didn't do any type of like follow-up, it was really a positive experience, because anytime I've ever heard about someone having a mammogram, they're always like, oh, they squeeze your breast so tight, and you got to get up in that machine and they squeeze, and I'm like, oh gosh. So and that is true. They do squeeze the heck out of your breast, but it's for the purpose of making sure that the machine really does scan your breast to really see every angle, every tissue. Because at first the nurse was like, well, we're gonna kind of see your pain level as far as like putting my breast in the little squeeze thing or the machine. So once she did it, I was kind of like shocked, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I think that's my level. And she said, okay, we're gonna go up one notch. And she was like, so I was like, oh. But I just breathed through it, and that was that. It wasn't like this long process, but I think I was just a little surprised about like the intensity of when they say, they're gonna squeeze your breast. They really do squeeze your breast. But if it's just something that I have to do annually, I'm happy to do that, because I really do want to stay up on making sure I just, know the health, my health, the current status of my health. So today is my MRI, and after I get my MRI today, then I have to make an appointment with my doctor so she can review my MRI with me, and then we move from there for scheduling and all of that good stuff, as far as like when the surgery is going to be, and me really trying to kind of figure out my like care plan, because the last time I had my myomectomy, I had a laparoscopic myomectomy, and I had to stay in the hospital. I was actually in the hospital for 2 days. I was in the hospital for 2 days, and I didn't enjoy that. And it was simply because the surgery took a lot longer than what it was scheduled for. I lost a lot of blood. They did not do a blood transfusion. However, I had to get on iron pills after. And it just took me a while to recover from that surgery. And I think that's why, I'm so like, oh my gosh, I'm so hesitant about doing this surgery, because I just don't want to go through that experience again. And especially when I'm having the same surgery and the difference is it's just a robotic myomectomy as opposed to a laparoscopic myomectomy. And I think the difference is the robotic is where the doctor sits at like this computer, and there literally is a robot doing the surgery while they're controlling the robot. But the robotic myomectomy, because you are allowed, having the robot manipulate the organ, it has a lot more precision than the laparoscopic myomectomy, where the doctor was actually the one manipulating the machine. So but this procedure that I'm having, the robotic myomectomy, is an outpatient procedure. So I am just really hoping that, I can recover, just have a better recovery period for this myomectomy than I had the last time. And in order to do that, I'm trying to make sure that I increase my water intake so that my body is hydrated. I'm doing a lot more exercising this time, because it clicked with me afterward to do the exercise, because I had lost so much weight. And then that's when I started doing a lot of exercise and had gotten really, really, really skinny. That was probably the best shape I have ever been in my life. So that was the only good thing that had came, and the fact that the fibroids were removed. I did have a huge fibroid, the size of a grapefruit, removed, and I'm not even gonna lie, I felt so much better, because I just didn't even realize how much that fibroid had just latched onto me and was just draining me. So, I don't know. I honestly don't know. And the thing about it is, I know I have fibroids because the doctor tells me, because I see it on the, the machine, the ultrasound machine. But otherwise, I've never missed a cycle since I got started my cycles at 10 years old. I have never missed one cycle a day in a month in my life. So I have a period every month. And as far as heavy bleeding and all of that, I mean, I don't consider it to be heavy bleeding. I'm not soiling, a sanitary napkin or anything like that. The only reason I can tell that I have fibroids is because I cannot hold my urine. When I feel like I have to go to the bathroom, I better go, because if I don't go, I will use the bathroom by myself, because those fibroids are pushing on my bladder. So this time, I can't remember. I know when I had my fibroids removed the first time, they removed 3. They removed one the size of a grapefruit. It was the one the size of a plum, I believe, and then it was one the size of a strawberry. But I don't know if they ever told me how many I had in all. Those are just the 3 that they could see. This time when I had my ultrasound, they saw, what they said, they measured 5, but in all at most 8. So there are 3 of them that were smaller that they could not really measure. But the thing about it is, I'm going to have this surgery, and they're not going to be able to get all 8 of them. Well, I don't know. I guess I would have to see that, or talk to my doctor about, which ones they'll be able to get. The good thing And I think this really has a lot to do with why I don't have like the heavy bleeding and the really bad cramping and all of the side effects that normally come with fibroids, is because my fibroids are on the outside of my uterus. So like where most fibroids are on the inside of the uterus, like in the cavity, mine are on the outside, literally on the outside of the organ, but they're attached to the organ. So they're a lot easier to get, and they don't necessarily interfere with how the uterus works, but it does, since it is attached to my uterus, it does enlarge my uterus. So that's the only good thing working in my favor. If I was to have fibroids, my fibroids are on the outside. So essentially what she said to me was, if I wanted to have a baby, where my fibroids are, it's because the baby would be like inside the uterus, it would not necessarily impact it as much. I would have pressure and, all of that. But she just recommends that I have them removed before I would want to have a baby. Now, do I have plans on having a baby anytime soon? No, I don't have plans, but I just want to prepare because I'm like, I turned 40, and it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, all right, Charmaine, if you want to have a baby, you're in the home stretch. It's like really trying to understand and prepare that because, I'm definitely a poster child for a geriatric pregnancy. And I'm okay with that because I am one of those people, what God has for you is for you. And honestly, the sermon yesterday at church was about get out of your own way. It was about the promise and the process, about how God gives you the promise is the bait. But you have to really go through the process and, prune yourself and understand who you're supposed to be able to accept that promise. And that's just honestly how I have really changed my mindset, honestly, within the last 10 years to really think about, okay, what God has for you is for you. And, I don't really get that whole pressure, or I really didn't get that whole pressure of when people are like, well, why aren't you married? Why aren't you having kids? Why aren't you da-da-da-da? And I'm like, because I'm trying to figure out myself. Like, I don't even understand who I am to be saying I want to be attached to a relationship and have a baby and have to provide for them. And I think I got a really good understanding of that is because I was a teacher. I was a young teacher. I was a teacher I started teaching when I was 22. I was only a teacher for 3 years, but it was very impactful. I will say that. And I taught at the school, it was a low income school. So a lot of parents, they were doing their best for what they could do for their kids. So a lot of times if it was like lunch money or having to go on a field trip I was the one paying for it, making sure my students had that experience. So they wouldn't feel left out or we didn't have. And that was very impactful on me as a 22-year-old to know that if I ever had kids, I really want to make sure that I am in a good space with all those financially, mentally, physically, emotionally to support this child, because when you don't, or when it is difficult to provide those things for yourself, let alone you have to give that to a child, it does impact the child. And I saw it for 3 years, and I just didn't want that for myself. I didn't want that for my kids. So anytime somebody would ever say, try to give me that speech, I would just be like, okay, I'm glad you got that off your chest. Because I knew for me, there really is a different impact. You got to be ready for them little babies. And, you got to be ready for them because they grow up to be third graders, which is what I taught, that need a lot. They need a lot. And they grow up to be adults that go out into the world. So, but now I'm feeling a little baby feverish, a little bit, only because I just turned 40 and I'm having this my second myomectomy. So I'm like, all right, Lord, we need to talk. But yeah, it is what it is. And I'm just kind of going through whatever my process is. So I'm going to finish my breakfast. And then I exercised yesterday, so my body hurts. Like, my calves hurt. I don't think I'm going to exercise today. But then I'm going to do some work and then start getting dressed so I can go to my MRI. So, yeah. So I understand now the reason why I probably needed to fast, because I have to get an IV with some type of dye in it, and that is what's going to go through my veins so that they can see any type of abnormal structure in my uterus. So there's that. Y'all, I am done with my imaging an hour later. That was a lot. So I was supposed to fast. Thank goodness I did, because I did get an IV put in my arm for the, I forgot what they said it was, but I, like, as soon as I got in there, and the tech that I work with, he was really great, awesome. You know, told me everything before it was going to happen. So I was very much prepared before, you know, anything started to happen. Because to be honest with you, that was not like my last MRI. And it didn't even take that long. So I was in there for like what time is it? It's 3:30. So I was in there for like an hour and 30 minutes. But as soon as I laid down to like be put in the tube, I just had to close my eyes. I had my eyes closed the entire time, because if I saw myself in that tube, I would have started like hyperventilating. And then because they had the little camera, you know, like on my pelvis, and after the machine was just going and going and going, it basically you know, got hot. It got really, really, really hot. So he just kept saying, if you could just hold on, you know, for another 10 minutes, you know, we'll be almost finished, and that whole kind of thing. So they're putting the images on a CD so that I can take a copy of it to my doctor, but they're going to send the images to my doctor. And then right now I'm looking around for like where I am, but I'm like, it's going to take a while, he said, because it's so many images. So now I'm looking around to try to find me something to eat, because I am hungry. Thank God I listened to that receptionist and fasted, but I'm super hungry right now. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go into the original chop shop and get me, I guess, like a salad bowl, and then go from there. So this looks delicious. All right, so I picked up my CD with all of my images on there. Now my next step. beautiful morning. Good morning. We made a week. Congratulations. I look a hot mess because I'm on my way to, on Friday mornings, I like to just get up and go to Chick-fil-A, get me a chicken biscuit and some coffee, especially like if I have points or something and they're free, it's free. So I'm just gonna run, get me a chicken biscuit this morning, and then fair enough, I'm gonna come back home and work out. Anyways, but yeah, we made a week, guys, and I'm so grateful. Everything is like working out so well. I was able to get my follow-up appointment with my doctor so that she and I could kind of review like my MRI. I also found out I have to have or schedule an appointment for an endometrial biopsy, and I'm really not quite sure what that's for, but that's what she said. I had to schedule an appointment to get that done. So I'm like, okay. And honestly, at this point, it's kind of like whatever she tells me to do, I'm just writing it on my to-do list, finding time on my calendar and doing it. Because I just really think that, you know, you have to really just kind of get to the place where you know that you're more important than any bill or insurance copay or anything like that. Because of course it's the end of the year. I mean, I always select whatever, you know, the highest insurance is, so that if I have to use it, I'm not like in a pickle of having to pay like this really high bill. But the thing about insurance is, you know, if you don't go to the doctor, you know, you don't use it, it's just kind of there. But as far as like meeting this deductible, I haven't been to the doctor all year. I think the first time that I went to the doctor to really use a deductible was when I went to the podiatrist. So I'm like, you know, they keep asking me like, well, you know, it's the end of the year, and I'm like, yes, but it's my health. So I don't care if I end up having to pay these co-pays, and if something, you know, if the surgery gets pushed back to 2026, then okay, I'll have to start over. I try not to get caught up in those type of things where it's like, well, your insurance says, you know, if you have it in this window, and it's like, no, my health, my body, that's what's most important. And if the insurance falls where it you know, I don't have to pay anything, or whether I do have to pay anything, it's just like, I don't want to hear that. Just, I want to be healthy. I want to make sure if it's something in my power that I can do to make sure I'm healthy, that's what I'm going to do. So all of that to say, I have to have an endometrial biopsy in preparation for this surgery. So once I talk to my doctor next week and we review our MRI, I'm going to ask her, like, what is that specific procedure for, or what, you know, just so I can kind of update and pull all of this together, just in case this is something that you may be thinking about doing and want to talk to your doctor about. But I just think it's so important, because at first I wasn't going to record any of this because, you know, I'm not able to really record in the doctor's offices anyway. But I just felt like, you know, I think it's really important to share these types of experiences, you know, because, you know, fibroids is just one of those things that I just really started dealing with back in like 2015, 2014. But it wasn't until that one fibroid really started growing and I could see my stomach expanding, where I was like, wait a minute, I gotta stay on top of this, because, you know, my health is very important. Because at the time, the doctor that I had, the gynecologist that I had, he wasn't really concerned. I take that back. I'm not going to say he wasn't concerned, but he wasn't really pushing, like, you know, information about fibroids. That honestly was like my first time hearing about fibroids. You know, you pay a little bit more attention when it comes to you. experiencing, you know, the situation or whatever the circumstances. So, but he wasn't really like, had any type of like, just rush for me to like have options of removing the fibroids or not removing the fibroids. So it wasn't really until I moved to Atlanta and got this particular gynecologist that I have now. She's really, really, really great. And I'm really glad that I was able to, you know, find her. But when I, like on my first appointment and she was able to look at all of my, you know, like medical history, the first thing she said was, we really need to stay on top of these fibroids. And I was kind of taken back because I was like, well, my other doctor, he wasn't really, you know, like he didn't feel like it was just of urgency, but she, that's their whole specialty. Honestly, this office that I have now is not a gynecologist OBGYN. It is just strictly a gynecologist office. So they are, well, my doctor specifically specializes in fibroids. So when she saw my chart and, you know, saw I already had the myomectomy and all of that, we just have always just stayed on top of it. So honestly, I'm really grateful for that. And, you know, it is, I know y'all are probably really tired of me saying it is what it is, because, you know, I can't change the circumstance of me having fibroids. I honestly, like I said earlier in the video, like I have fibroids, but I'm grateful that they're not inside my uterus, they're on the outside. So it makes for, I mean, a better case, I guess you could say, for me. I'd rather not have them at all, but, you know, whatever. So it is what it is. But I'm so thankful, and I'm just gonna do what I need to do for myself, for my health. So like I said, I'm gonna run to Chick-fil-A, get my chicken biscuit, get my coffee, and I am gonna go back home, work out, do some work, and then I'm gonna start my weekend, and I will start my next video as far as my fibroid surgery goes for next week. But I want to thank you all so much for tuning in, and you know, if you haven't become a subscriber, please do. We welcome you. Welcome. But yeah, you all have a beautiful weekend, have a beautiful week next week, and I'll see you on the flip side.